Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Solution Spotlight. I will give us a couple more, a couple minutes, 1 minute, just so that people can trickle in, and then we'll get started and kick off this webinar.
Hi,
Hey,
everyone.
everybody.
Louis, Sarah, did you do anything fun this past weekend?
No.
I did something. Well, first of all, my kids ran a very busy day. My kids ran a 5K and then we went to a clam festival and they were entered in like the biggest clam contest and we went clamming on Saturday. So anyway, I went clamming.
That's it.
We,
Do you is shucking a thing with clams? Is that
Yes, I'm not very good at it. With oysters, it's really the oyster shucking, but yes.
yeah,
So we went clamming. There's a rake, there's all this stuff. We had a big basket full of clams. It was pretty cool.
nice? And you got to bring them home?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we brought them all home, but then there was a few that we entered in the contest.
Oh,
The kids division, but we didn't win.
no, bummer. Maybe next time.
Yes. So a little, unusual local color weekend.
a lot more fun than my weekend. We just moved, and so I actually had to install a patio gate this weekend, and gate installations are very complicated. And so if anyone's ever dealt with a gate installation, I had a really painful several hours of installing a gate this weekend.
Well, maybe you guys can all commiserate on
Yeah.
games.
I believe you. I
Cool.
wouldn't take on that.
No, me neither. But let's dive into Solution Spotlight. So,
Right.
welcome everybody to today's Solution Spotlight, how to build scalable systems without burning out. My name is Sarah Williams. I am XYPN Senior Partnerships Operations Manager, and joining me today are Louis Retief, product owner and co-founder of Hubly, and XYPN member Sara Stanich, founder of Cultivating Wealth. Now, in today's session, Louie is joined by Sarah, who will share how she built scalable systems within Hubly, and you'll hear how her firm aligns workflows across the entire client lifecycle, uses automation to save time, and preps for client onboarding without any last-minute scrambles. So that is on the docket for today. But before I turn the mic and the stage over to Sarah and Louie, just some housekeeping items. There is going to be some time for questions throughout the presentation. Louis is going to be monitoring them. So by all means, as questions pop up, feel free to use that Q&A tab below and drop them throughout, and they will be answered during the presentation. And then XYPN is hosting a couple of online webinars in the next couple of weeks. So tomorrow, October 8th, we have one with our very own Senior Director of Sales and Marketing Operations, Sam McHugh, and he's going to be presenting on AI and how that is changing SEO, how to show up when your ideal clients are searching, and just yeah, how AI is really infiltrating the space. And then October 28th, so a couple of weeks from now, we have another solution spotlight with Precise FP. Work less, scale more, the upgrade every advisor needs. I'll drop both of those registration links in the chat, but yeah, that is the housekeeping items. Louis, Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks.
Awesome. Well, maybe we'll quickly just kick off with some brief intros. Um, Sarah, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I'm Sara Stanich. I'm the founder and I guess president of Cultivating Wealth. We're an independent RIA. I started the firm in 2016. I joined XYPN slightly a little bit after that. We are a team of five, um, and plus a virtual assistant. We manage about a little over 200 million of assets under management. We also do advice only engagements and yeah, and we have 5 team members and about
Amazing.
190 households. That's what I was.
I'm glad you mentioned some of those just so folks can get an idea of like scale of firm. I find that the operation, scalability, workflow conversation always changes depending on actually how big the firm is and the team. And so thanks for providing that context. For those who haven't met me, my name's Louis. I'm the product owner and co-founder of Hubly. Co-founded Hubly in 2019. We are the market leading workflow and automation tool for financial advisory firms. We work with the fastest growing advisory firms on the market. The average Hubley advisory firm is growing 33% faster than the average RIA firm in general. And so we're working with the top firms, which Sara is one of those. Hubley was recently acquired by DocuPace in February. And so we're actually sister companies with Precise FP, who is also owned by DocuPace. And so it's been a wild ride building and co-founding Hubley, and excited to be here for this conversation with Sara today. For a little bit of context on what we're going to cover today, there's going to be two parts to our conversation. First off, Sara and I are going to have a conversation about her journey in growing, building, and scaling Cultivating Wealth. It's going to be more fireside chat format. We're then going to transition into a live demo for all those nerds out there that actually just want to see and feel what the product looks like, what the automations, how they work. We will get there. I do promise this is not just going to be a fireside chat conversation, a webinar. And so stick around for that. We'll transition into that. That will probably be a really good time to ask any questions about specifics of how Sara and our team use the product, how they implemented it, etc. And so we'll transition to a little bit more specific, nerdy conversation around Hubley and workflows. And we're excited to do that. So to kick us off, I do like to bring us back to when we met, Sara. We met in May 2022, which is over 3 years now, if my math is right. And I went back in our CRM. Luckily, we use a CRM at Hubley, so we know it can go back to like old notes. And I was curious we had an initial sales conversation back then. Hubley didn't even have a trial sign up process back then. But I was curious as to what sort of goals did you have for the firm 3 years ago? I'm sure your goals have changed many times since then, but I always like to reflect back as to what you told me in that sales call. And so the major problems you were facing back in May 2022 were threefold. One, you needed what you called a view to see what people were working on. Two, you wanted to see where clients are in your process. And three, you had a lot of what you called SOPs, or standard operating procedures, for those that don't know the acronym, that needed to be developed. Reflecting back to May 2022, why were those things important to you back then?
It's really interesting that you with me, for the call, what those goals were back in 2022, and so it was like, oh wow, a lot has changed since then. But a relatively new team. My team was actually about the same size, but the members of the team have changed. And so, I think we were adjusting to that. We were smaller in terms of AUM. We were onboarding clients at a pretty quick rate, but I was no longer the person who was, the lead advisor on any like new client engagements. And so I just, felt a need of like, how are we going to standardize things? And, we needed better systems to do that. We needed something that was better integrated with our CRM. We use WealthBox, and we just, needed a system that kind of worked the way my mind worked. So I had experimented with things like Trello boards or, different checklists and things. We had a big Google Doc going with like a lot of, checklists and standard operating procedures, but we just needed something that was easier to like scale across the team.
And why was the word scale important to you back then? Like, what did that mean to you as the business owner or the president? Was it you could get out of the day to day and out of the weeds? Was it that you could keep promising the delivery of things to your clients? Like, why was that important? Like, what was the deeper reason to why you were looking at that as a solution?
I mean, just with new advisors, the the way of doing things couldn't be in my head. So, and I did feel strongly that I wanted things to be done a consistent way. Like we're one firm and one brand. I mean, it's not the before I started the firm, I was in an environment where I shared a branch office with other advisors, but everybody just kind of did things, their own way. So just having a consistent process was really important.
And did you have any experience prior to having to deal with those challenges in your firm where you've addressed or process challenges in previous lives?
I mean, I'm kind of process oriented. I mentioned like things like Trello boards. I love a checklist. And so I think there was, some of that already that I was looking for something like that. But before I started the firm, I mean, I was really a solo advisor. So there with an assistant like toward the end. So there wasn't really as much of a need. I didn't feel as much of a need for like really tight workflows until I had a larger team.
And reflecting back to those goals that you mentioned from
hmm
2022, May, do you think you've accomplished them? Yes,
I
yes, no.
do, I do, I do. I can see what people are working on. I can see where clients are in the process. We have, of course, we're always fine tuning workflows, but we have just everybody really lives in Hubley, and so that's really great. And just in terms of scalability, I mean, I think and you had mentioned that Hubley works with like leaders in terms of growth. I mean, we've been taking on like 30, 40 new clients a year, and you, you need to make sure things don't fall through the cracks when that's happening. And so Hubley's helped us do that.
And have your goals changed today, or is still scale process like the main thing you focus on, or is that part of the business building problem been solved and now you're thinking about other things on the day to day?
I think that, I'm still looking to scale in other ways, but also taking things off my plate. And so, having the workflow, the checklist, everything set up already allows me to assign things to other people. And so early on, there had been a lot of things where like the default person it's assigned to was me. And so, but, over the last few years, slowly but surely, more and more things have I mean, I still get tasks in Hubley, but more and more things are assigned to other people, and that allows me to focus on other things like running the business and doing things, not so much like for like one particular client, but for the good of the firm.
I ask that selfishly, Sarah, I'll be honest, is that I do a lot of calls with thousands of advisory firms over the years, and I find commonly there's this expectations that like workflow or process is like a one time thing, right? Like I just got to do it and then like never think about it again. Where your answer I love is that like yes, I've solved a lot of those things, but it's still a focus, right? Like changing how you service delivery and grow your business is just part of the job if you're going to be a business owner and building a firm like yours and trying to deliver a certain level of client experience that you plan to deliver. And so I just love the culture that you and your team have, and you specifically have brought to your team around this is a constant focus. This is part of how we build and run this business.
Agreed. But I will add that when we started in 2022, we had someone on our team who just had more experience with wealth with workflows and was like really kind of in the weeds with like getting a lot of things set up. But now, and I was like less so, but recently I've sort of gone back in and sort of, renewed my relationship with workflow editing. So yes, it's very, very exciting over here.
So there's a question about what does your workflow look like in Hubly, and we'll get there to the specific demo part where we'll actually show it. But maybe can you tell people about your implementation journey of Hubly, and also I wouldn't mind if you talk about how you try to implement the CRM workflows at first, and then you mentioned Trello, right? Like you tried many systems and then maybe transition to telling about your Hubly implementation. And then specifically, I would love for you to touch on what was easy about it, but also please touch on what was hard or difficult about it, right? Like workflows are not a silver bullet, and I never pretend that even Hubly is, but touching on what's easy, hard through that whole journey would be really helpful, I think, for the audience.
Sure. I mean, I think that as I mentioned, we had a lot of things in kind of a giant Google Doc, that and so that was a good place for us to start. Another reason that we chose Hubly, frankly, was that you had a lot of pre-built workflows, and we had tried using some of the like XYPN had some pre-built workflows in Wealthbox, but for whatever reasons, like they never really clicked with us. I needed more, maybe because we're more of a team than a solo. I don't know. I like that the view, the sort of, is it the Kanban, type of view? But I will say that I use that view more than other people on my team who tend to be like pulling up an individual like client card and seeing, what's going on with the client. Maybe they're getting too in the weeds here. And then just sort of the easy and hard. I mean, I think it made it easier that you guys had already some many workflows built out, and we could like choose or not choose to use them. So that gave us a starting point. That made things helpful. What's hard, I mean, just changing people's habits in general. But after I would say a few months, I mean, we were really fully on Hubly. I think everybody in our team has it up and running all the time. It's the first thing they check. And then there's been a few things that we use for like automations, like Zapier automations that have been like a little trickier. So that's hard, but that's like sort of like outside of Hubly, I would say.
So, Sarah, I don't know if you know this, but it is called Kanban. Now, Kanban was actually invented by a Toyota engineer back in the 1940s. Like, it's just the concept of a visual signboard on where things are at in the process. And he developed it specifically to help their just-in-time manufacturing process to signal when there were issues or blocks, right? And so there was an easy board where everyone can see, like, here's a block, and we need to give that thing attention. And it's interesting that it's so old, even way before like software as a service was a thing. But there's something intuitive, I think, about humans and like how we see the visual design of a Kanban board. It really makes sense to our brains, and we can really quickly see where we need to prioritize our time or our attention. And so I think it's fascinating that something so old is still like very heavily utilized today, and most software products have the concept of a Kanban board to see where things are at.
Yeah. I like that's kind of my mind works. I'm kind of a visual learner, but you just made me remember when we were in the process of like kind of interviewing Hubly and talking to other people, we talked to some other providers that were more general, and their kind of selling point was like, oh, you can customize it to do anything you want. I'm like, I don't want to get, I don't want to like start from scratch.
Yeah.
So that's part of make it easy as well.
And maybe I'll tell the audience that are not necessarily familiar with Hubly is what's called an operating system. Uh, is super common. Like everyone has seen an advertisement for tools like Trello, Monday.com, Asana, ClickUp. Like anyone who's a professional has probably seen those ads because they're massive companies. Uh, we've taken very similar technology, but just for financial advisors. But we've learned from all the best practices of those technologies on how to make process management automations as meant like we're purpose built and we integrate CRM. And so you could go use some of those industry agnostic tools that Sarah mentioned, but you're going to be stuck with a lot of customization, a lot of building, where Hubly almost becomes pre-built for you with a lot of the best practices available. And just so some of the audience kind of knows what Sarah is talking about there, I thought I'd mention the concept of operating systems and how to think about them in your business. And so when you're implementing Hubly, initially I see a lot of individuals struggle with like, okay, who's going to do some of the workflow building? Did you do a lot of the workflow building, or did you delegate that to one of your team members? You mentioned someone was pretty good with workflows, or was it a team effort?
I would say that, I mean, there was someone on our team that was like leading it and like kind of the project manager. But I'm just remembering when, at a team, get together, like, we sat down and like all worked on them, you know, sort of picked three and you know, did some editing and suggestions and kind of worked through a few as a team. But now, as I said, you know, recently I've been delving into making some updates. I'm pretty much doing that on my own, but then sometimes, um, you know, maybe screenshotting things and sharing them in a chat with my team of like, does this make sense? You know, it's a mix.
And is there after that in that team
And
meeting, is
actually,
there?
I will just add,
Yeah, go ahead.
our team is all remote. So we get together in person maybe once or twice a year, and maybe have a social event and then sort of like a work session type thing. But then most of our interaction is like over a Zoom. And so there have been times where I'm like, can we just Zoom about this and like work through it, you know, together with like one person on the team?
And at that initial team meeting, where did you guys decide to get started, right? Like there are hundreds of workflows in an advisory firm that need standardization and standard operating procedures. Where did you start? Why did you decide to start there? And kind of how did you align the team around that?
I think I believe where we started, and I think the easiest place for most teams to start is with client onboarding, like initial client onboarding. Because, you know, as I mentioned, we are growing pretty quickly, and that's like a time where, you know, you really want to be responsive, especially, and, you know, sort of keep the process moving. So that was really where we started, but we already had a good process for that, so it was easy to sort of convert that from,
Mm.
you know, like a Google Doc to some workflows. Um, and but then we added things like client reviews, annual reviews, and there's, you know, things that were pre-built in Hubly that were like age or date based, things like that that we've been, you know, we've added over time. I also do some like our business operations. So we have a weekly team meeting and we update our team numbers before that meeting. Trading, money movement, things like that are all in Hubly.
Amazing. Sarah, if you were to give some advice to anyone who wants to get started with setting up processes to scale their firm, is there any advice you would share with them or places to get started? Or is there something wish you could tell your older self, in terms of like, or sorry, I said, say your younger self in terms of where to get started and to make it easier potentially?
I guess starting with the things that you have, um, you know, a list for. So if you start with something like, um, you know, insurance review, and you don't really do insurance in your business, so it, you know, just sort of starting from scratch. I find that harder. I feel like it's easier to test it out if it's a process that you already have and see if like, okay, if this makes sense to everybody. Um, that's where I would start. And so for us, the client, you know, new client onboarding, and our sales process was a really good place to start.
I love that you said that because it's one of the main things I share with new firms getting started. Like the best way to see if a workflow works is to test it for a real client, not for a fake client. There's a lot of fake client testing that happens in the workflow when you're building it, but you truly are able to test a workflow when you run a real client through it and you're like, okay, we forgot about X, Y, or Z, or this is too complicated. And so the fastest workflow to implement where you can start testing it on real clients is generally speaking the right one to work on. Now, there is also what we do tell firms, every single advisory firm we have ever worked with needs a client onboarding process. Every advisory firm we've worked with has a client review process, and every money firm we work with has some sort of money movement processes, account openings, transfers, trades. And so those are generally three good categories to start with. The other thing we like to share with firms, I don't know if you guys ever did this, Sarah, was if you're currently doing task tracking in your CRM, actually just export all of those tasks. Or if you're doing task tracking on a Google Sheet, export them all from a Google Sheet into a CSV. upload that into a chat GPT or a Claude and ask the AI system, say, hey, here's a list of all the tasks that we execute on a regular basis. Can you help identify the best workflows to build out for the things that we're doing on a recurring basis? It's a really powerful way to help you get started with workflows, to look at existing data that you might have on tasks that are done frequently by the team.
It's really interesting to me that you say that because, we definitely did not do that. But also, 3 years ago, I don't think that would have been as popular an option, an idea.
The
Yeah,
tooling didn't exist, right?
yeah,
And so it might
yeah,
have made your life easier.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm seeing a couple of questions about Hubly. So let's transition. I think that gives people a clear idea of your workflow journey, where your firm is at today, what's working, and where there's always room for improvement. And so love to transition to a live demo. And so if you can share your screen and
Sure.
maybe kick us off and talk about like a classic day in the life, right? Like of using Hubly. How does your typical day start? What buttons do you click? Where do you go? What do you look for? What stands out to you? And then I'll probably ask some follow-ups from there.
Okay. I'm like a little nervous, but I'm okay.
You got it.
Okay. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. I made sure it was in privacy mode. And just make this big. Okay. So I would say, where people start is over here with like the hub feed of like their tasks that are assigned to them. And so things that are like yellow and red are today, or overdue. And so, just seeing like how many tasks you have there is a good place to start. And I would say that's where a lot of times the team is starting. But when I want to look at things like that I mentioned about where are people in the process, for me, I like to see the Kanban board. And so, looking at our prospects and our, new clients that are onboarding, well, then there starts being, a lot of things, that are happening. And so I'll just go left to right, I think, because the process kind of works that way. But so lead referral, this is where if we get an inquiry from like XYPN, find an advisor, or NAPFA, or fee only network, something like that. It's nothing that complicated. It's just like, okay, add the contact to CRM, send an email. The email's like, thanks for reaching out. Would you like to schedule a meeting? Here's a link to my calendar. Pretty basic, but it's just make sure that it gets done in a timely manner. And then if the intro, maybe follow up if I think this is set to be like a week later. Um, and if the introductory call is scheduled, go that. Most of our prospects, to be honest, they start in this introductions call where maybe they found us online and they just went right ahead to our website, cultivatingwealth.com, and it says get started, and you can schedule like a 15-minute introductions call with someone on our team. And so they schedule the meeting. We have an automation set up. So when they schedule in Acuity, it does a zap and like creates the contact in Wealthbox. So there's not like that typing, copying, and pasting, and also kicks off the workflow in Hubly. So those automations are part of like where the efficiency and scaling starts to come in is in those automations, which do take a little bit of fine tuning to set up, but once they're there, they're there. So
And
this
so
is
you currently have 4 clients who've scheduled an introductory call recently, right? Based on just your board there.
yes, yes. So this one, someone else on my team had the intro call this morning, and so I guess they didn't schedule. They didn't schedule the consultation right there. Oh, actually, no, they did schedule the consultation right here in me. But anyway, she didn't close out the workflow. But we have some things on here of like, okay, review the client info, add the referral source to Wealthbox because we didn't figure out how to automate that. And are they qualified? Yes or no? Consultation scheduled. Um, connect on LinkedIn if that seems like a good idea. Update the opportunity in Wealthbox is, the way we do it. But yeah, these 4 people. So these people, I think, probably hadn't scheduled the they just didn't schedule the consult yet. So that's why they're still in this, in the introduction. This person is someone I have a meeting with tomorrow, and so the service team is unassigned because I'm going to assign it to somebody else, like after that meeting, after I talk to her and decide who I want to assign it to. But this is something new I've been kind of experimenting with, is the forms. And so I just have, okay, she qualified, yes or no, just yes. And so, and then it kind of changes, it changes the tasks, based on like your answer to some of these questions. But, if I had said no, it would have been, um, uh, it would have said like, send a thank you and, refer to someone else if that's appropriate. So yeah. And then if they, and does that all make?
Don't know if people are joining back in.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that, folks. That was technical difficulties, but I think people will filter in, but I believe if we want to just pick up where we
Sure.
okay.
Yeah, I'm like, ooh.
Weird.
Interesting glitch, but
All right, well,
good.
let's kick off again. And so,
Okay, so I was in the workflows. Okay, so sharing my
and I
screen
think we're
again.
recording as well, and so we should be able to stitch it all together and send out the recording. So sorry about that, folks.
Sorry about that. Okay, make sure I don't touch anything, but in the Zoom window. Okay, so I was talking about the introductions call, the next step in our process, client schedule, a consultation. I think if I just drag someone here, no, that's not going to work. But oh, I did. Okay, so for the consultation, to see what that workflow looks like, the client is supposed to upload documents, yes or no. If they don't upload, we reschedule the meeting. So just those things, just keeping the whole process moving, keeping things from, falling through the cracks. And someone is checking this to make sure that um, someone is like looking to, you don't get to that the day of the meeting and realize, well, they never uploaded anything. And so this meeting is going to be kind of a waste of my time. So I think um, that is good. And then our next step, so if we have an introductions call and then a consultation, we send the client a proposal. This proposal I sent, I don't know, last week, or I sent on the 19th, but actually I did follow up with them, and it doesn't say here, but they said, oh, we just need a little more time. But it's just, keeping us on track that we are, following up. So they say, yes, let's go from the proposal. Well, then we start our onboarding process, and, there's a whole list of tasks there going as well. So adding tags and streams. So this is advice only. This is a new client. Did we schedule our discovery meeting? Did we invite them to write capital? We've got, did we update it in Wealthbox? All those little steps that are easy to fall to miss. We make sure they get done in a consistent way. So that's the first onboarding, and then the second onboarding is, let's see this one because I haven't done that. She just said yes like 2 hours ago. So there's a task for me to, send her an agreement. We use a different software for that. If we send a welcome gift, and then the fee billing is different depending on if it's AUM, flat fee, or a mix.
What I love about this, Sarah, and maybe I'll just mention it, is it's not rocket science, your workflows, right? Like these are the key steps and stages of how we're engaging with a new client. And here are the basic tasks that we need to do at each step. And it's not overly complicated, but it's also not overly simple, because there's a lot to onboard a client for doing financial planning and financial advice, right? Like you're a large part managing someone's future livelihood. And so there is a lot of detail that needs to be sorted out. And so I love that you've just like broken it up. And you're a team of five, which isn't a massive advisory business either, but you have 20 plus clients that are currently in that onboarding phase of your relationship. And like you can't keep 20 client relationships and the details of those and where they're at in your head. Like I'm at least not smart enough to do that. And so you can quickly see where folks are in this process. And if someone, is deciding to delay their signing of the agreement, you can just keep them in that holding pattern, right? That, okay, they're stuck at this stage. And at some point, you can either remove them from the stage if they're truly not going to proceed, or you can just keep checking with them with 3 or 6 months until you're like, okay, I've checked in enough times now, I can now remove them from this stage of the process. And so I just really love the way you've built that and visualized all the different steps.
Thank you. Thank you. And for me also just making sure that everything they're assigned to other people. And we have like it's by default assigned to certain tasks are by default assigned to the lead advisor and the associate advisor, and we have that assigned on every client, but you can change it where, maybe it's something that is someone I know personally and I need to review or something like that. But yeah, so we keep going, and so in the card here, okay, if we want to click over and see the client in wealth box, that's easy
Cool.
to do.
I got two questions in the chat about Wealthbox, and so maybe I'll ask those now. So the first question is, when you make notes in Hubly, do those import to Wealthbox? And then the second question in relation to that is like, what are the benefits of building workflows in Hubly versus Wealthbox? I've obviously answered these questions 1,000 times, but I will maybe ask you to answer them, Sarah.
Yeah, so you can make notes here and you can make them either like with the task or just kind of like general with the client, and they do import over to Wealthbox. We also, I guess it's the integration is between Jump and Wealthbox. So if we, there's a meeting summary generated by Jump that saves to Wealthbox, well, that also shows up here. So it's a pretty tight integration on all sides. The pros and cons of doing it here versus Wealthbox. I think when we started this, their Wealthbox workflows were not as robust as maybe they are today. So that it really actually couldn't do some of the things that we're doing here. I think maybe it can do some other things, but I don't know all the intricacies of like what they can and cannot do. I'm not really, an expert on that because this is the system that's working for us, and so I try not to fix what's not broken.
Maybe I'll give my 2 cents for Kim just
Sure.
on, building workflows in Hubly opposed to Wealthbox is my general advice for any firm is always build workflows first in the CRM before adopting Hubly. If you've not given the workflows in Wealthbox the time of day, you're already paying for that software. Like go try to use Wealthbox workflows and task management. Generally speaking, you will outgrow them at some point. And now I can mention the details of what that means, but their workflows are limited to a certain degree. And until you have figured out those limitations, I recommend using that system. And at some point, you're going to run into issues with it. And then that's the right time to buy Hubly and to implement Hubly, because we are just a more sophisticated workflow automation system for really fast growing advisory firms. Generally speaking, Wealthbox is what I would say good enough for a lot of firms. And until you reach that stage, try to save money, especially if you're a solo practitioner. Like, don't just spend more money on software just because it looks good. Is generally my advice for most firms.
That's good advice.
Yeah, it might be counterintuitive. I should be selling Hubly, but I also am
So
practical in my advice I give to business owners.
yeah. So I don't have we've got a lot of people who are just, I think it was kind of dead in the summer, honestly, like August and July. So, but September and October have kind of picked up. So there are, some people here, but then, we also have workflows for like our next few meetings, like our initial like planning meetings with the client. I can't really add here, but the I guess I could show. Oh, I don't really think that's. What if I just drag this over just to see what the next? It's not really letting me do
Just for
that. Oh yeah.
context, for those watching the demo, you'll see a lot is blurred out. That is obviously client PII. We can't demo that information. And so a lot of contact information, notes and etc. are blurred out just for demo purposes today. Those are obviously not blurred out if you were actually using product on a day-to-day. And so continue on, Sarah, talking about your next meeting here or next workflow.
Sure, sure. So, we have we have like extra steps here, and maybe this is not the most, sophisticated workflow, but we just extra steps of like, okay, well, what's actually going to go into this presentation? And so this is an opportunity for the lead advisor to assign the paraplanner or associate, okay, this is what I definitely want in this deck, like go do the first draft basically, and, in this prep for these meetings. So, a lot of what we're doing is prepping for these meetings, and it's like, what are we prepping? And there's, you click on the detail, and there are other instructions, in there as well. So bullets, notes, links to outside documents, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what
What
else.
the thing I'll point out there is that, you mentioned it's not a super sophisticated workflow. Those are actually the best workflows to start with. I think a lot of people that we end up working with always jump to automation right away. They're like, I need it to be fully automated. And it's like, yes, and get there. I like to think of Ariel Minacosa thinks automation. She put this really well that automations are the icing on a cake. You first need the cake, which is like the basic workflow of the tasks that need to manually be done. And then you can start asking yourself, which of these tasks can we actually automate? Like, for example, the automation of your Zapier that automatically creates the client and adds them to a workflow. But until you have the basic foundation of the cake, don't worry about the icing. That will come very intuitively afterwards. And so I generally recommend don't jump to automations. But now that you have the basic workflow, Sarah, you can now start thinking about automations. Like there's definitely a couple opportunities in there we can chat about and some options there. But now we have something to actually improve. And so I love that you mentioned it's unsophisticated. Even after 3 years of using the system, there's other workflows that are a lot more sophisticated, right? But it's still better than not having anything.
Yeah, and we have also added things that I mean, the prospects and new client onboarding we use all the time. I mean, definitely use all the time. But sometimes there are things that don't happen that often, but you're never, because they happen so rarely, you're never going to remember. So I'm just looking through like the list of all our workflows. So TIAA, sometimes like a rollover from this specific custodian, and or like how do we pay back on like someone who has got like a securities based loan? Like we don't really do that often. And so you're never going to remember that. And it's like, okay, well, maybe we did it for this client, so we need to go look back in a bunch of emails. Anyway, so having in the workflow for when it does come up is really helpful, because it's something that happens so rarely. So, and these things that say WIP, that's work in progress, we just never, really updated that workflow. So, we're not necessarily using all of these, but we're using a lot. And I use it for some of the operations things like my monthly bookkeeping, sending, what I need to send off to the bookkeeper every month. Some of our compliance stuff, new employee checklist, quarterly billing, those types of processes, those are in here as well. But some of these workflows, it's not so much about having like the whole team involved. It's just so like I don't forget to do them, and don't miss any steps.
You just had a really good question because I love where you're going with this. And Ryan had a really good question is how many total workflows and how many of them are actually used? We actually have an insight report for this in Hubly. And so, Sarah, can we navigate to insights and then scroll down to the workflow templates report?
Okay.
Let's open up this and we'll show Ryan live. I actually haven't looked at this in a while for your firm, and so it'd be good to just dissect this live.
Great. I do look at this actually. I would say like when I'm doing a quarterly wrap up,
Yeah.
or end of year wrap up, I look at that stuff. So trade on account, we use that a lot. That's
Yeah.
the, 1,000 times, all these trades. Client review follow-up. Is that what you wanted to look at? Is like
Yeah,
how
so just
workflows are
for
using?
Ryan, I'll answer the question here. So Ryan, Hubly automatically tracks your what we call workflow utilization, which is what Sarah's opened up here. And so on the left there, you can see the workflow name as you have the trade on the count. You can see the create date on when that workflow was originally created, which was August 2022. You can see when Sarah last updated it, which was 2024 August. And then you can see how many times that workflow has been started and how many times it's been completed. And so you can see here, Sarah has north of 30 workflows that are being started and completed on a regular basis. And if you scroll down, there's probably more. And so, she probably has 50 odd, if not more, workflows that are being utilized by our team. Like that's actually a pretty broad implementation and utilization of Hubly. Sarah is really awesome. You normally see on average, around 10 to 20 for our firms. Sarah and our team have really deeply integrated Hubly, which is why why we're showcasing Sarah and her team. But the concept of workflow utilization is really powerful. And it now gives Sarah and her team the ability to start looking at this on a quarterly basis, as she said, is like, what are we using? When's the last time we updated something? Like there's a workflow that's, just to pick on one, end of week update. That workflow hasn't changed since 2022 November. And so Sarah can be like, oh, maybe it's time to revisit that workflow and maybe improve it, just to pick on one as an example. And so
And I never look at this report, so I'm like, oh, look how many we made in 2022 and 2023. But yeah, and also, as I mentioned, I kind of got back into this recently, and yeah, I just last month I updated the move money, and the client review schedule. I'd made some updates recently, so and that's kind of cool.
awesome. There's another question here from Kim is there a view or a board that's specific to team members? Like how does your team utilize this on a day-to-day? Where do they go? And more importantly, is there a board that you focus on? I know you showed the hub feed earlier. Is that the main thing that your team navigates on a day-to-day, or how would you say they utilize it?
There is a different view. I would say people kind of start with the hub feed. This is kind of like your to-do list almost. So a lot of people kind of start here. And if I want to see what people are working on, I can actually change, to a different person. The other thing that I do sometimes is you can do
You can filter by the team member on the process. Is that the
yeah. Oh no, the views. It's on my current work. So sometimes I look at like this view or like so what is my current stuff that's, I'm assigned in in here and maybe I might have I'm sort of like more in the weeds with, more different types of things, I would say, than a lot of people on my team. So but so you can hide the things that you're not using, but there's all these other, workflows that are have someone, something in them. But I would say the easiest, the place that the most people in the team are probably kind of starting is in the hub feed. And then maybe if they want to look at like, okay, well, what you could look at just like one particular work view, like what review meetings I have coming up, something like that. This
yeah?
is
You can
maybe
create
sometimes in the Zoom it slows down the
Yeah, the
computer.
webinar plus running the webinar and Hubly at the same point is a lot for your
Okay.
computer. And so context wise for the audience here, so you can create any what we call a view in Hubly. So you can pull up a process, which Sarah pulled up there, which was all of her client onboarding workflows. You can then apply a filter to that process view. So you can say, I only want to see the tasks that have been assigned to me and that are overdue. So you can create an onboarding overview, client onboarding overdue dashboard for Sarah, for example. And you can create as many of these as you want. And so there's a lot of flexibility in setting up different views for different team members. The world's really your oyster there. But once again, you also, it really depends on the user. Some people are just task people. They just want to see their task list and they want to go from there, right? And then there's folks like Sarah that want to see more broadly what's happening over the organization.
Yeah, and so so this was like the client review. It's like these are the people we have a reminder that comes up like 6 months after the last review meeting. Time to schedule a new meeting. So we've got a task there, and so we send the email, and then the next task is follow up. Meeting scheduled. Anyway, the client
Do you
sure.
mind on that workflow, the scheduling workflow, do you mind showing, if we just go to the workflow editor and just show people how you set up that automation at the workflow level?
Yeah. Like edit up here?
Yeah, let's, and we
Okay.
can show. So when you build a workflow, you can set up what are called automation rules, which Sarah was just referencing there. You can see Sarah set up a number of automation rules here for, you have your A, B, and C and D clients, I presume.
Yeah, so the A's and B's, it's like, okay, let's follow, like 6 months later, let's schedule a meeting. But the, C's and D's, it's really a year, an annual review meeting.
Just to confirm, Sarah, what's happening is I'm assuming your clients schedule their review meetings via Acuity as well, correct?
Yeah.
So just to confirm, they schedule their meeting via Acuity. Let's say they schedule it for October 14th. That will automatically add the meeting date into your CRM, correct? Or does it add it into
Yes, but
Hubly?
actually it adds the meeting into CRM, but you do have to in Wealthbox like associate it with the client.
Got it.
But then once it's associated with the client, it's automatically shows up here. I don't need to like open the workflow um in Hubly. It's already, been opened, been
Perfect. And so Hubly
kicked off.
syncs in your CRM meeting data. So you can see top right there for Richard, his last meeting was December 19th.
Yeah.
And so Hubly has access to all of your meeting data from your CRM. And then you can set up an automation rule, which Sarah was talking about, that monitors that meeting date for you. So it basically monitors all your meeting dates, and you can set up a rule that says 6 months after my client's last meeting, if they're an A client, add them back into the review scheduling workflow. And so you basically never have to think about review scheduling ever again. Hubly does it for you and then just assigns a task to you when it's ready to actually schedule that client again. Is that
Yeah.
correct on how you guys have set that up?
Yes, yes. And it's also, I was just going to add that it's kind of handy to see up here on the right, like, okay, well, we met on September 30th. Our next meeting is October 9th. So, we use like how old they are. So this is someone that we have a meeting this week with. And so um, I'm assigned as the lead, someone else is the associate, and she's, kind of doing all these tasks. And if it's something that we don't need to check for a client, well, we can just either delete the task or leave it unchecked, and when we're done, complete the workflow.
So there's a question from Ryan. How do you distinguish or how do you utilize tags differently, or they're the same thing?
The tags, well, they're the same tags for Wealthbox flow into Hubly. So things like if I just one I'm thinking of right now is if someone has the tag RMD in Wealthbox, well, then they're going to fall into the RMD workflow in Hubly we actually set it, instead of being January 1st, we set it to be February 1st, because then we may have
What do you want
already taken
tasks on
care
Jan
of some
1st?
in January. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I didn't want to like walk in on, coming back from
Yeah.
New Year's, that they're already there. But yeah, so they automatically, get pushed into the RMD workflow.
Maybe I'll just give my thoughts. Ryan, like streams or tags aside, right? Like what's important and what Sara said there, which I think is brilliant, is like it's important to categorize your clients because you can determine different levels of service that they get, right? Just because someone has an R&B tag, now you know that there's this work that you have to do on an annual basis for them. And so categorization is important for that reason. Now, tags and streams pretty much function the exact same way. The one just integrates with the CRM, the other one doesn't. But categorization allows you to set up automations for different segments of clients. Now you can only use tags or only use streams. There's no difference really. There's a difference in how they're displayed on the UI, and there's a difference in how they sync with your CRM. But other than that, there's no hard, fast rules about how to use them differently. Awesome. I know we're coming up close to the top of time here, and Sara Williams is going to probably tell us to start wrapping it up. Sara, are there any additional outstanding questions that we have not yet addressed or ones that the audience still wants to ask while we work to wrap up here?
Yeah, there were a couple carryover from the last session. So one of the ones was, is there a time tracker available in Hubly? We already saw some of the workflow, so that was great. And then there was a question about the DocuPace and Hubly merger, but for sake of time, we can maybe punt that for a later conversation.
I would just say there is a time tracker. We don't use it that much. I've tried using it a little bit, but I was just gonna maybe I mean, if you want to
Yeah.
talk about it, but
So,
I figured it's good to show, yeah, where it is.
so there is a time tracker. Generally speaking, depending on your situation, I'm not a big fan of time tracking. Our workflows all automatically do time tracking as well. Like when was the workflow started and is when is completed. So you can run reports to say, on average, how long does it take us to onboard a client, or on average, how long does it take us to complete this workflow? And so I like higher level time tracking in terms of like metric management, but like individual task tracking actually just becomes a chore for your team and actually stunts productivity, I find. Interesting concept. Feel free to schedule a demo and we can chat about that some more on our website. And then Sara, I can quickly talk about the Hubly, DocuPace, and Precise FP. So a little quick context, Hubly was acquired by DocuPace once again in February. DocuPace also owns Precise FP. I'm sure there's a lot of users of Precise FP on the call or those that are also XYPN members. Now that we're sister companies, we are working on pretty deep integrations with one another. As we speak, nothing has been released yet. There's a number of zaps that you can already set up and templated zaps. But yes, I think you can ultimately expect Hubly and Precise FB to become more integrated over time, given that we have the same parent company. How's that, Sara? For the 30 seconds I had.
We're good. Yeah. Thank you, both of you, Louis and Sara, for joining us today. And then to the rest of you, the audience, thank you so much for listening in on this conversation. It was really fruitful. And if you are interested in trying Hubly, there is going to be a link that I'm sharing here where you can try it free for 30 days. If you have any remaining questions for Sara about her practice, how she really uses Hubly in her practice, then you can reach her via LinkedIn, also included in that chat. And then if you're thinking about joining XYPN, we would love to have you, of course. You can always schedule a call with one of my colleagues, one of my teammates, and that chat is also, or that link is also available. But otherwise, yeah, Louis, Sara, again, thank you so much. Any closing thoughts before we close out?
The last two things I'll mention is one, if you're interested to find out more about Hubly, please sign up for a trial on our website. XYPN does have a discount code for all of our pricing, and so just get that from your XYPN partner portal, so you get a nice discount on Hubly. And the second thing I'll maybe mention for Sara, and feel free to comment, is Sara did mention she's willing to share her workflows if anyone is interested on that. Sara, do you want to let how people can contact you if they're interested in maybe getting access to your workflows?
Oh, sure. So it's just Sara, Sara, at cultivatingwealth.com. And I'm happy to share my workflows, and or like it's like it would be through a referral link, I believe is how the process would work. Happy to share that, or just if you just want to schedule like a networking Zoom, you can do that on our website with me. Happy to chat as well. Happy to help.
Great. Thank you both. Enjoy the rest of your day. I hope that there are more clamming adventures in the future for you. And yeah, hope to see everybody again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thanks.
you.